Del Monte isn't just a food brand, it's an icon. With over 130 years of history, it established itself as one of America's oldest and most recognizable companies, known primarily for its canned fruits and vegetables. Del Monte's story is fascinating because it originated in an era when food companies didn't worry about creating a strong brand. Back then, the grocery clerk was usually the one who selected products for customers, so there was no need for flashy packaging to grab consumer attention. But Del Monte was different. In 1909, the company launched its now iconic shield logo, which became a symbol of quality and trust. Ever since, the brand has been a constant and reliable presence on supermarket shelves, not just in the U.S., but in many other parts of the world. The shield wasn't just a logo, it was a promise. It represented the certainty of a consistently high-quality product, something that became rare in the market. Del Monte became synonymous with canned foods, creating a strong and lasting connection with generations of consumers. Del Monte's story is a reminder that even giants can fall. And if you'd like to understand how iconic companies work, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next analyses and stories like this. For decades, Del Monte's presence on shelves was a certainty. But that 130-plus years of stability was shaken by a shocking piece of news: the bankruptcy filing in July 2025. The announcement caught many by surprise, but for those who had been following the company closely, the signs were already clear. For years, Del Monte had been closing several plants to cut costs, including 2 in 2024 alone and 1 scheduled for 2025. Furthermore, the company's financial situation was so delicate that its credit rating suffered several downgrades. Amid the chaos, the company sought to calm the market. The CEO, Greg Longstreet, made a public statement to explain the situation. He said, "After a comprehensive evaluation of all available options, we have determined that a court-supervised sale process is the most effective way to accelerate our turnaround and create a stronger, more enduring Del Monte Foods." The bankruptcy filing didn't mean the immediate end. The company secured over $900 million to continue operating normally while it searched for a buyer. The intention was to restructure the business, pay off debts, and find a new owner who could revitalize the brand. Although the future was uncertain, the message to consumers was clear: Del Monte's cans should remain on the shelves, and daily life would not be affected. The question now was, how did such a consolidated giant reach this point? And what, exactly, was the fatal mistake? What seemed like a blessing became one of Del Monte's biggest traps: the pandemic. At the beginning, the company experienced unexpected and deceptive growth. With lockdowns and restrictions, people were at home and limiting their trips to the supermarket. Naturally, the demand for canned foods, with their long shelf life and convenience, skyrocketed. It was the perfect moment for Del Monte, and the company responded aggressively to this increased demand by ramping up production. However, what Del Monte didn't anticipate was the speed of the turnaround. As soon as restrictions were lifted and life began to return to normal, the demand for canned foods dropped as quickly as it had risen. The problem was that Del Monte couldn't adjust its production in time. The factory was already operating at maximum capacity, and the inertia of production resulted in a huge problem of excess inventory. The company found itself with massive stock that needed to be stored and eventually sold. To get rid of the surplus, Del Monte was forced to liquidate its products at a substantial loss. This financial decision, made in an attempt to clear inventory, aggravated an already fragile financial situation. The company had already been struggling to turn a profit, and the disaster of overproduction turned a problem into a crisis, leaving the company in a worse position than ever. Since its origin, Del Monte has always positioned itself as a premium brand. The company's name itself comes from a luxury hotel in California, which says a lot about its initial ambition. Throughout its history, Del Monte's advertising has always emphasized the high quality of the product, reinforcing the idea that the consumer was buying the best of canned foods. There's nothing wrong with being a premium brand, but in Del Monte's case, it became a colossal disadvantage, especially in an increasingly competitive and price-sensitive market. While Del Monte maintained its position, competitors like Green Giant and Dole attracted customers with more modern advertising and, more importantly, lower prices. The rise of supermarket private labels, which offered comparable products for a considerably lower price, also stole a significant market share from Del Monte. This paradox intensified during periods of high inflation. When consumers' purchasing power decreases, brand loyalty is often lost in the search for more affordable prices. The modern consumer, already accustomed to cheaper alternatives of acceptable quality, no longer felt obligated to pay more for a can with the Del Monte shield. Another decisive factor in Del Monte's crisis was the change in consumer habits. After World War II, the consumption of canned foods boomed, becoming a pillar of the American diet. However, starting in the 1970s, this trend began to lose steam. Consumers started to prioritize fresh or frozen foods, which were seen as healthier. The perception that canned foods were not as nutritious as fresh foods became predominant, partly due to concerns about preservatives and BPA, bisphenol A. Del Monte, a company whose main product was canned food, was directly affected by this change in mindset. For over 50 years, the demand for this type of product has generally been decreasing. Del Monte even tried to diversify with other products, but the damage was already done. And here lies a crucial point. In 1989, the company split into two, with one selling fresh produce and the other canned goods. The 2025 bankruptcy applies only to the canned foods division, Del Monte Foods. This separation makes the company's fall even more symbolic, as it shows that the division that most represented its legacy was the one that couldn't sustain itself. To fully understand Del Monte's downfall, it's crucial to analyze its ownership history. The brand was a pawn in a game of corporate giants, passing through a complex list of owners over 4 decades. The business was bought and sold so many times that it's hard to track all the owners. From a group of canning companies to being part of Arjar Nabisco, Del Monte was an asset that changed hands constantly, often without a clear long-term plan. This lack of stability had serious consequences. The company suffered from inconsistent management, as each new owner brought a new strategy, often reversing what the previous management had done. The passion and personal connection with the brand, which were so important to its essence, were gradually lost. Del Monte became just a number on a balance sheet, an asset to be leveraged and sold, and not a legacy to be protected. The constant acquisitions prevented the company from executing long-term plans that could have strengthened the brand or its operations. The focus was always on short-term results to satisfy the new owner. This volatility in leadership and strategy caused Del Monte to miss the opportunity to reinvent and adapt, making it a reactive rather than innovative company. If Del Monte's story were a disease, debt would be the cause of death. The company was weighed down by large volumes of debt for decades, a problem that was directly linked to its history of leveraged buyouts. In each purchase and sale, Del Monte was used as collateral for new loans, becoming increasingly financially burdened. The 1989 deal, for example, was the largest leveraged buyout in U.S. history at the time, and to pay the interest, the company was forced to sell parts of its own business. The result of this debt spiral was devastating. Interest payments consumed profits, leading to annual losses even in years when revenue was positive. The sales of divisions like Hawaiian Punch and the company's pudding were made not out of strategy, but out of desperation to pay down debt. Del Monte was left without capital to invest in modernizing its factories, in marketing, or in product innovation. Ultimately, despite all the other problems, the brand dilution, declining demand, and fierce competition, indebtedness was the most fatal factor. The company didn't file for bankruptcy because consumers stopped buying canned foods. It went bankrupt because the debt became an unsustainable burden. The bankruptcy filing and the search for a buyer were, in fact, the only way out for a company that had been financially suffocated for decades. This story about the challenge of being a premium brand in a competitive market is a lesson for any entrepreneur. Do you know someone who needs to hear this? Share this video with them. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and leave a like. See you in the next video.